Hello there, Tina Jessen here. Wanted to talk a little bit about my story in a way that I've never been inspired to talk about it before. And it was actually the it was actually Michelle Obama that inspired me to actually put this video together today. This is a Christmas present from my sister-in-law. I haven't got very far with it yet, but I did read the back cover, and it was this sentence that really brought it home to me. Even when it's not pretty or perfect, even when it's more real than you want it to be, your story is what you have, what you will always have. It's something to own. Getting a bit emotional. I've always kept my story in compartments. I am an entrepreneur, and I'm going to step into that role. Back in 2008, when I first moved to the USA, I went business networking, and everybody was a consultant or an entrepreneur. And what that really meant was they hadn't got a job and they were trying to make a bit of money on the side, and then they were trying to start some kind of side hustle. But for me at that time, when I realised that, it's like what somebody just said it to me as a flippant comment, I think. It's like, oh, all those people that are unemployed. So for me, entrepreneur is almost like, well, you're not employed, and has a negative connotation. But thanks to certain podcasts I've been listening to, I've realised that entrepreneurship is actually fashionable and in vogue and kind of cool. And after reading Michelle's introduction there to her book, it just got me thinking that I've been kind of hiding away some of my story. And I do believe, and I really do believe this, that stories are unique, but I've always focused on the positives. I've never thought of opening up the full story. And I've been contemplating on this actually for a few days. And I'm going to be brave enough to share some of the lowlights as well as the highlights, and really what makes me me, and why I want to inspire others, I think, because there is nothing so heartwarming and fulfilling for me than to inspire somebody to take action. So I was born to a single mum. In fact, my mum did tell me that she was actually going to have me adopted after I was born. And as a result, I slept the first month or two in a drawer because she didn't have a cot for me, which I remember when I heard that, I was quite horrified that my mum was going to do that without really appreciating the fact of the sacrifice she made keeping me. And I did have a bit of a harsh upbringing. I remember I was very overweight as a child, and I used to get teased a lot. Today you'd call it being bullied. The chant they had was Tina Wren, the big fat hen. My surname, my last name was Wren at the time, obviously. But I do remember getting off the bus, the school bus, and some of the boys in my class, they'd pick these plants, tall plants that we had at the side of the road, and they'd actually come up behind me and they'd whip to the back of my knees, and my legs would be red raw, and that's not just mental abuse, that's physical abuse, and at the time it was just I was being teased, but today you would say that was bullying. So yeah, it was a little bit rough growing up. And then in oh gosh, I Okay, so in my town, I live just outside a small town, and the town would have a carnival each year, and there'd be a carnival queen competition. And when I turned 19, I was reading the newspaper, and they were asking for contestants to sign up for this carnival queen competition, and they hadn't got anybody. They'd not had anybody, and I think the carnival was starting to be on the decline. And I think now they don't do it at all. But in 1985, I remember reading this and thinking, well, I've lost a lot of weight since I was at school, and I'm quite confident now. I wonder if I should apply. I tell you what, if nobody applies, I will apply at the last minute and just see. I'll just give it a go. I was kind of like, well, if not this, then that, and I was kind of like putting it out there in that way. Well, it turned out that they, were extending another week because they still not had anybody come in. So I sent my information in, and then that got put into the newspaper. Tina Wren, as it was then. Tina Wren leads the way. And because a lot of people knew me at school, not because I was the bright, shiny one, but because I was the one that was always picked on and teased, and they were going, how on earth could this girl, this overweight girl, think that she could go, I'm going to apply too? And I think it inspired a lot of people, and they actually had the most applicants that year. I think they had something like 25 people actually applied that year. And I went on and won. I mean, that was just incredible, absolutely incredible moment. And I think it was at that point that I realised that through what you do, you can inspire others. And that kind of spurred me on a wee bit more. I ran a Sunday school for a few years. In fact, the very first thing that I did on the radio was at the age of 9. It was Science 77, and age of 12, Science 77. Probably been about 11 and a half then. We'd been challenged. We were going to go to this big exhibition that was held in the city of Derby, which was like big lights for us because we were a small village, big city, we had various projects and we had to pair up, and I paired up with my friend Wendy. Wendy was so shy, and it was like, wait, don't worry, Wendy, I'll do the work, so I'm okay doing the work. So I did the work, and I was a bee, and I made this tape recording when tapes were the only thing we had. I made this tape recording of me being a busy bee, and I was a worker bee talking to, and I played various roles and different voices, and it was all a lot of silliness, but it actually went through to this competition for Science 77, and it actually got broadcast on BBC Radio Derby, and my mum was quite chuffed at that, and I was like, cool. So there was moments of just putting myself out there. Anyways, I started my first business. I was in corporate IT for about 15 years. I thought I did pretty well, kind of climbed up the ladder there in corporate, and finished there as head of IT risk management, whatever that meant. I started working a home staging business as a side hustle. Which at the time people weren't talking about side hustles, and I don't know if that's just a British thing or if it was like, well, I'm doing this on the side, but I've got to be quiet about it and I don't want to talk about it, and I'm kind of like doing it under the, it's kind of like a little bit like, but there was completely no conflict of interest because I was doing IT in my corporate, and this was something very different. But it wasn't something that you celebrated, so again, I kind of hid it back. And then I had a massive tragedy in my life. I lost my half sister to a terrible incident, and that really put in perspective what life is all about for me. And I was starting to really not like my day job, but really starting to love my business. And I made the decision to do the full transition. I did about 6 months working both. Openly, I went part-time in my day job. And then after 6 months, I actually left and went into my home staging business full time. And I ran that pretty successfully for about 8 years. And then I moved over to the USA. Great opportunity for my husband's job. I felt that he'd been supporting me for the last 8 years with my home staging business. It was now my turn to help support him in his career. And we moved out to the US. I did actually end up closing that home staging business, but retained the training, and that's one of the businesses that I'm involved with still is the Home Staging Academy, which is one of my businesses. And then I worked for a little bit in corporate IT in US in the United States market, in corporate USA. That's what I was trying to say. And that didn't last more than 6 months because I realised that was a really bad mistake and that I really had to work for myself. And I went out and I started a food business, which has developed into me now owning 2 tea rooms. I also am getting really well known for doing events. So we work on experiential marketing. It's something I did in my home staging career, but I'm doing very much so in my restaurateur career, if you like, really getting known for extraordinary events. And that is something that is very meaningful to me, to the point now that I also own a tour company and a retreat, an experience company. And we're going out to hospitality and building experiences into our interactions. And so I've got several businesses that I'm working on at the moment, and working with other businesses to help them with their marketing, their positioning, their visibility, and coaching businesses is really where I'm going next. So that's a little bit about who I am and where I've come from, but why your story is so important. And as Michelle Obama says in her book, Becoming, and I would recommend it. I've got a few chapters so far. Even when it's not pretty or perfect, even when it's more real than you want it to be, your story is what you have, what you will always have, and it's something to own. Take care. Till next time.